Almighty God, who in thy wisdom and goodness has appointed the offices of rulers and parliament for the welfare of society and just government of men. We beseech thee to behold with thy abundant favor us, thy servants, whom thou hast been pleased to call to the performance of important trusts in this land. Let thy blessing descend upon us here in this house assembly. Grant us that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner, to promote thy honor and glory, to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of this country, and of those whose interests thou hast committed to our charge. Amen. Honorable members of the National Assembly, His Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia, my Lord, the Chief Justice, Honorable Cabinet Ministers, members of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps, permanent secretaries and heads of institutions, staff of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, clerk and National Assembly service staff, senior government officials here in present, service chiefs, religious leaders, members of the press, all other invited guests, and the general public. Good morning to you all and welcome to the National Assembly. Honorable members, today we convene to consider one of the most significant legislative responsibilities bestowed upon us, this Assembly, that's the tabling of the appropriation bill by the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs. The appropriation bill represents the foundation of our government's fiscal policies, detailing the allocation of resources necessary to implement the priorities and programs outlined in the national budget. This bill embodies our collective responsibility to ensure sound financial management, accountability, and the delivery of essential services to our people. Honorable members, it could be recalled that in accordance with Section 1521 of the 1997 Constitution and Order 86 of the Standing Orders, the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs tabled the estimates of revenue and expenditure of the Gambia for the fiscal year 2025, that is 1st January to 31st December 2025, both days inclusive, on Friday, 15th November 2024. Accordingly, and pursuant to Section 1521A of the 1997 Constitution and Order 86 of the Standing Orders, the National Assembly considered and approved the said 2025 estimates with amendments on Tuesday, 3rd December 2024. Therefore, in pursuance of Section 1523 of the Constitution and Order 87.2 of the Standing Orders, the Honorable Minister for Finance, Clerk, may we proceed.
Section 152 of the 1997 Constitution and Order 87 of the Standing Orders, appropriation bill 2025, budget speech by the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs.
Honorable members, the bill is deemed to have been read the first time, and I will now invite the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs to table the bill. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and His Excellency, Honorable the Vice President, His Excellency the Vice President and Cabinet colleagues, members of the National Assembly, distinguished participants present, all of the protocols duly and respectively observed. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the bill entitled An Act to provide for the services of the Government of the Gambia for the period 1st January 2025 to 31st December 2025, both days inclusive, be read a second time. Honorable Speaker, in January 2024, His Excellency Adama Barrow, the President of the Republic, launched the Recovery Focused National Development Plan, otherwise called YIRIWA 2023 to 2027. The plan seeks to consolidate gains in democratic governance, accelerate economic growth and social transformation, and build resilience to shocks and crises. Implementation is now in progress, and notable gains have been registered in some areas such as macroeconomic stabilization. The domestic economy witnessed a sustained recovery despite uncertainties in the global economy. This is being driven by increased production and productivity in agriculture, recovery in tourism, and unwavering construction by the government and the private sector. Sustained disinflation has been witnessed in the last 9 months, driven by tight monetary policy pursued by the Central Bank of the Gambia. The exchange rate has also stabilized, and the gap between the official and parallel market has almost closed. Under the leadership of His Excellency President Adama Barrow, the government is embarking on a new set of revenue reforms. Resultantly, revenue collection is an upward trajectory. Despite the fiscal pressures, the government managed to successfully host the OIC, complete critical infrastructure projects, and support poverty alleviation programs. To ensure strategic and impactful use of public resources going forward, the government is scaling up the program-based budgeting. These efforts are meant to transition from the traditional line budgeting to a program-based budget framework. The framework demonstrates a clear linkage between the ministries, departments, and agencies' budget programs and the Recovery Focus NDP. By aligning the budget allocations with national priorities, shifts this emphasis from input-based budgeting to performance-focused budgeting. This enhances the effectiveness of decision-making and the drive to more strategic and impactful use of public resources. The 2025 budget is anchored on reduction of the overall fiscal deficit, aimed at achieving debt sustainability while enhancing economic development. For this reason, the government intends to continue the drive towards rationalization of expenditure, improve domestic revenue mobilization, restructuring domestic debt, and focusing on concession financing of infrastructure projects identified in the Recovery Focus NDP. On the spending side, the 2025 budget seeks to support economic development through the provision of quality services in agriculture, education, health, infrastructure, development, and the modernization of the public administration for a more inclusive and resilient growth. Emphasis is being placed on building the human capital base through investment in education, health, support poverty spending, including emergency relief and the ongoing investments in infrastructure and energy. To this end, the theme of the 2025 budget is bolstering economic growth and reducing vulnerabilities while ensuring fiscal sustainability. Macroeconomic overview, Honorable Speaker. Developments in the global economy. The global economic outlook, although stable, remains uninspiring. Risks are inclined to the downside. A flat growth of 3.2% is projected for 2024 and 2025. In the medium term, growth is projected to average 3.1%. This is lower compared to the pre-COVID pandemic average due to the persistent structural headwinds such as the aging population and weak productivity. Regarding regional growth, the anticipated recovery in the United States will be offset by slowdowns in advanced European economies. Similarly, disruptions to production due to conflicts, civil unrest, and extreme weather events in the Middle East and Central Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa will be compensated by the recovery in emerging Asia. The rate of disinflation is moderating and varying across regions. Global headline inflation is expected to fall from an annual average of 6.7% in 2023 to 5.8% in 2024 and 4.3% in 2025. Goods services have stabilized, good prices have stabilized, but services price inflation remains elevated in many regions. Advanced economies are expected to return to their inflation targets sooner than emerging markets and developing economies. As the global disinflation continues to progress, risks remain elevated due to growing geopolitical tensions. Developments in the domestic economy. Honorable Speaker, the Gambian economy has shown remarkable resilience in the face of global uncertainties. As a result, it is estimated to grow by 5.8% in 2024, compared to 4.8% recorded in 2023. The improvement is due to stable macroeconomic environment, strategic investments in infrastructural projects, increased productivity in agriculture, recovery in tourism, and resilient remittance inflows. On the sector-specific developments, crop production continued to underpin the agricultural sector, growth due to support from the government and development partners. The livestock subsector is estimated to maintain an upward trajectory, while fisheries and agriculture subsectors are estimated to recover from contraction on account of renewed focus on aquacultural development. Overall, the sector is projected to grow by 6.6% in 2024. The industrial sector, which was driven mainly by construction over the past years, is estimated to register a growth of 0.8%. The slowdown is due mainly to the completion of many high-impact public projects. However, the private sector infrastructure projects remain robust. Domestic electricity generation is recording a gradual increase on account of new projects, although demand continues to outstrip supply. The mining sector is estimated to stabilize, while manufacturing growth is estimated to register a modest growth due to competitiveness challenges. The services sector is expected to register a strong growth of 8.4% in 2024, driven by tourism and trade. This is due to targeted intervention by the Gambia Tourism Board and the rising consumer spending following price stabilization. On the prices front, the sustained tight monetary policy stand has triggered moderation in inflation from 16.7% in January to 10.0% by September. The implementation of the foreign exchange policy by the central bank, coupled with increased foreign currency inflows, restored exchange rate stability. public finances reflect mixed performance in 2024. The revenue mobilization reforms adopted and implemented by the government are yielding significant results. At the end of September 2024, domestic revenue collection for the first 9 months of the year amounted to 24.2 billion against a target of 23.1 billion. Tax revenues amounted to 13.24 billion, an increase of 3.6% over the projection. Additionally, non-tax revenue, particularly administrative fees, reached 4.4 billion, significantly surpassing the target of 3.53 billion. Grant disbursements remain resilient. In overall, revenue and grants outturn for the year is expected to exceed target. With regards to expenditure, budget execution has been particularly difficult this year due to the unanticipated spending shocks. These include the intervention of the government to the tune of $20 million, equivalent to $1.4 billion to NAWEC, to settle arrears with independent power producers. These payments serve as tariff compensation to cushion the population from tariff increase, which would have put untold economic challenges on the citizens. Other expenditure pressures came from the hosting of a very successful OIC summit. The anticipated financial support for hosting of the summit was not realized, and the government was obliged to bankroll the expenditure related to the summit. Consequently, the overall expenditure execution as at end September was at 84%. To absorb the unforeseen expenditures during the year, government managed to reprioritize certain expenditures to achieve the net domestic borrowing target. These measures include constraints on expenditure on use of goods and services with execution rate of 57% over the period. Due to higher than planned expenditure, the overall deficit, including grants for the first 9 months, stood at 7.2 billion. With the unexpected disbursement in the budget support, with the expected disbursement in budget support in the last quarter and expenditure restraint, the deficit is expected to slow to 5.1 billion by the year end, against the target of 4.5 billion. Key sectors. Honorable Speaker, we now turn to the key sectors of the economy, and we begin with the finance and economic affairs. The ministry is making efforts to strengthen the linkages between the budget and the NDP. For the first time, the government will be sharing booklets containing information on intended program results from all ministries, departments, and agencies. The government also intends to build on the gains registered on the introduction of gender-responsive budgeting and to embark on climate tagging to facilitate the tracking of climate expenditures. On the public financial management reforms, the ministry has developed state-owned enterprise regulations and a dividend policy. The ministry has also concluded midterm review of the Public Financial Management Strategy 2021 to 2025, and focus is now on developing a new PFM strategy 2026 to 2030. Similarly, the review and amendment of the Public Finance Management Act is ongoing. To ensure efficient management of government assets, an asset management policy was formulated and adopted. The ministry is also working on finalizing a new aid policy which provides a framework for the operational guidance of aid to improve its alignment and harmonization to national priorities. The government is planning to embark on advocacy and resource mobilization missions for the recovery-focused NDP. An integrated national financing framework strategy was developed, which seeks to provide a framework for sustainable financing of national development priorities. To improve the monitoring of the National Development Plan, the Indicator Metadata Handbook was designed to provide comprehensive information on the indicator definition, description, relevance, and calculation methodology, among others. The government will participate in 2025 voluntary national review to assess the country's progress in the implementation of the SDGs. The productive sectors. Honorable Speaker, the Ministry of Agriculture with the support of development partners, continue to drive its transformation agenda guided by the Recovery Focus NDP. Through various interventions, production of key commodities across this country significantly increased during the 2023-2024 agricultural seasons. This was driven by increases in yields for maize, rice, etc. For the 2024-2025, the ministry provided fertilizer support amounting to 35,000 metric tons, including 1,000 tons of organic fertilizer for vegetable growers and 5,513 bags of 50 kilograms of chemical fertilizer. High-yielding seeds amounting to 67.4 tons were also distributed. On livestock, the ministry implemented various development initiatives which contributed significantly to the growth and sustainability of the sector. The Livestock Master Plan and the Livestock Sector Strategy were developed as roadmaps, along with updated veterinary legislation and the Animal Health Act of 2023. In 2024 and 25 seasons, the ministry aims to increase land preparation and yield using high seeds varieties targeting 4 tons per hectare. The ministry will engage the private sector by expanding the SME, matching grants, and other incentives to attract youth and women into agriculture and improve market access. It also plans to launch the Gamisal to increase financing access and build institutional capacity for research and development. Developing the value chain for key crops and livestock remains central to improving production and productivity in the near term. Fisheries and water resources. The ministry, with the support from development partners, implemented various projects and programs aimed at improving the sustainability of the fisheries and water resources sector. These include procuring and installing 40 automated rainfall stations in all administrative regions. This will enable the department to increase its weather forecast accuracy and monitoring. The ministry also launched a regional project in July 24 to improve water access by populations facing the effects of climate change. Moreover, fish processing technology that help to improve health and the quality of women fish smokers were distributed. To enhance the participation of Gambians in fisheries, the ministry procured 20 new artisanal fishing boats. As part of the plans in 2025, the ministry will be strengthening the fisheries jetty infrastructure in Banjul to enable the licensed industrial vessels to comply with the 100% landing requirements in the Gambia. This will increase employment and availability of fish for domestic consumption. The government will operationalize the national hatchery to produce quality fingerlings. The ministry will also prioritize construction and installing of 55 large solar-powered pipe water supply systems to provide safe and quality drinking water to 250,000 people in the rural areas. Communication and digital economy. The Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy is finalizing the formulation of the Communications Bill 2024 that will enhance the legal and regulatory frameworks, sustain the principles of fair competition, and ensure quality, affordable services for consumers. Concerning the digital infrastructure, contract for the second subsea fiber optic cable transaction advisory was signed in July 24. This initiative will ensure adequate redundancy in the first mile as well as increased bandwidth capacity. The ministry is prioritizing further upgrades and expansion of the LTE networks to onboard and extend reliable connectivity to government offices to improve efficiency and timely service delivery. Priority is also being given to creation of the 202,375 digital addresses comprising of households, businesses, and landmarks in the West Coast region. Tourism and culture. The tourism sector has shown remarkable recovery trend, To sustain the trajectory, the Ministry of Tourism and Culture introduced 2 new tour operators in 2024. The Gambia Tourism Board, in collaboration with the development partners and the private sector participants, has come up with various marketing and diversification initiatives, such as rolling out another Smiling Coast destination video, introduction of placards across all registered tourism establishments throughout the country, and the establishment of agri-food processing and packaging unit to encourage the use of local ingredients and create employment opportunities for youths. In the area of culture, the sector prioritizes heritage conservation for job creation and economic upliftment of our communities. In 2025, the subsector plans to demarcate other TDAs such as the North Coast and the Kiang West National Park. The sector will also roll out more youth-friendly products such as theme parks, as well as picnic hubs in the TDA1 to target the millennials. The sector also plans to pursue the revamping of Site Museum at Fort Bullen, among other programs. Trade, industry, and regional integration. The ministry has been extensively involved in mitigating the impacts of global market uncertainties, ensuring priority berthing for vessels carrying essential commodities, and extending the duty waiver for rice importation. These efforts have helped stabilize prices and ensure the availability of essential commodities. Efforts are also directed towards the formulation and implementation of the African Free Continental Trade National Implementation Strategy. The ministry also prioritized the She Trade Hub program, which aims to support women-owned businesses. In labor and employment, the ministry facilitated the signing of bilateral labor agreements with UAE, Saudi Arabia, and negotiations are ongoing with Qatar and Spain. These initiatives aim to gradually reverse the irregular migration trends and promote manpower exchange. In export promotion, GAIPA has enhanced the global presence of the Gambian products. In 2025, the ministry plans to expand trade facilitation efforts, advance sugar import negotiations, and broaden the China duty-free three-quarter scheme, which is a non-reciprocal tariff preference program for the LDCs, the least developed countries. The African Continental Free Trade Implementation Strategy will be intensified with a focus on priority sectors. Regional integration efforts will focus on finalizing the trade and transit cooperation agreement with Senegal and Guinea-Bissau while expanding the Lumo modernization program. With regard to the industrial development, plans include launching the trade corridor and the special economic zones. The ministry will also continue to strengthen its labor migration framework and work towards enacting the legal metrology bill while operationalizing the National Reference Food Testing Laboratory. Ministry of Works Infrastructure. This ministry remains committed to improving the infrastructure of the country. Significant work on road infrastructure has been witnessed. Through government local funds, government is funding the construction of key priority roads nationwide with a total length of 355 kilometers. The widening of the Batin-Hardin Highway has reduced travel time by more than half for commuters traveling from Banjul to the airport. The 50-kilometer urban roads project is progressing steadily. Despite the challenges encountered during the implementation, the Nyomi Hakalang and the Kiang West roads are in their final stages. Priority has been given to road maintenance programs and, in some instances, expanding the network. Among the prioritized roads are the Kerewan Jawara Road, Bani Salikenya, and Brufut Madiana Kunkuja. They are all expected to be inaugurated in the first quarter of 2025. The Gambia Civil Aviation has successfully commissioned ultra-modern Doppler VHF omnidirectional range DVOR at Banjul International Airport in the second quarter of 2024. This has enhanced operational safety and efficiency at the Banjul International Airport. In line with the NDP, GCAA is undertaking works on the overlaying the runway pavement and construction of a modern loop at runway 14. These works, which will cost $20 million, are expected to enhance the safety of aircraft operations and prolong the lifespan of the runway. Concerning the GPA, significant strides are made in enhancing operational efficiency of the port. Port handling capacity increased following the implementation of the cutting-edge technology and acquisition of cargo handling equipment. This has already started to ease congestion and improve turnaround times for vessels. Additionally, the acquisition of the Banjul Habdai properties to increase the port's container storage capacity was completed. In 2025, the ministry has prioritized the implementation of Phase 3 Batin-Hardin Highway project, which will address most of the safety deficiencies and the issues relating to the congestion at the roundabouts, as well as some of the heavily traveled intersections. Phase 3 includes the construction of service roads, roundabouts, pedestrian crossings, improved storm drainage systems, and a new overpass at the Sukuta roundabout. Plans are also included in implementing a terminal operating system and a port community system to streamline operations. Petroleum and energy. The energy sector remains one of the key priorities of the government as enshrined in the NDP. NAWEC has continued to register improvement in electricity subsector despite the demand outstripping supply. As part of the strategy to diversify sources of energy while reducing the negative impact of environment, NAWEC has inaugurated a 23-megawatt solar power plant in Jambur at the beginning of 2024. The Petroleum Commission has set up and hosted 2 data rooms visits for reputable oil companies as part of licensing activities. A license management system has been developed to enhance the monitoring of the implementation of licensing and contracts. To ensure the attainment of vibrant and more transparent geo-extractive industry, the ministry is in the process of developing a minerals and mining policy and a mining cadastral system. In 2025, the ministry prioritizes the implementation of an integrated data management system which will enhance access, retrieval, and preservation of valuable geological and geophysical data. Access to clean water, the NAWEC will expand access to water and sanitation service in the rural and peri-urban areas. This is aimed at achieving universal access with a minimum coverage of about 85% by the end of 2025. Social sectors. Honorable Speaker, as per its mandate, the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education continues to improve the teaching and learning environment, especially in underserved areas. A significant increase in enrollment across all educational levels has been recorded in 2024 relative to 2023. To accommodate the growing demand, the number of schools increased from 3,690 to 3,839 over the same period. Over 5,500 new classrooms with furniture and 5,000 toilet cubicles with facilities catered for physically challenged students across the madrasa and conventional schools were constructed as of June 2024. The ministry during the year prioritized technical and vocational education to ensure that youths are equipped with essential skills that meet the labor market demands. Additionally, the Second Chance Education Program has been expanded, enrolling 600 participants nationwide in 2024. The ministry has also initiated a comprehensive needs assessment of the education sector to improve quality education at all levels. To address the challenges of the timely textbook supply and replacement, negotiations are nearing completion for the procurement and delivery of lower and upper basic school textbooks. The ministry has launched a MOPSI radio station on 89.3 FM, currently covering the Greater Banjul area and parts of the Fonyis, with plans for national coverage. Higher education. As part of government's effort to support research and innovation, the Ministry of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology, has inaugurated the state-of-the-art facility at the University of the Gambia Faraba Bantan Campus, Lot 1. Additionally, the ministry, in collaboration with the Organization of Southern Cooperation, signed a cooperation agreement to establish a multidisciplinary research facility at the University of the Gambia Faraba Bantan Campus that will provide unlimited access to online resources. Construction works on Lot 2 of the UTG Faraba Banta campuses are ongoing and are expected to be completed by end of March 2025. Similarly, the ministry will establish 2 additional training centers in Kumbo South and Lower Fuladu, respectively, that will focus on agribusiness and fisheries. Construction works at the University of Applied Science and Technology, Science, Engineering and Technology, USET, Brikama campus, are expected to be completed by end of 2024. As part of the activities of 2025, the ministry will prioritize the construction of the School of Medicine and Allied Sciences, which will include dentistry, pharmacy, nursing, and public health and medicine. Health. The Ministry of Health continues to strive to deliver quality health services and prevention measures. The investment in the health sector has resulted in improved critical health care service delivery, particularly in areas such as maternal health, neonatal, and under 5 mortality ratios have all improved. The ministry developed an EHMRS to improve healthcare personnel management. To date, it has 5,000 registrations. Efforts are being directed towards transitioning to digital data collection and improving the birth registration. The National Health Insurance Act was piloted at Bundu Maternal and Child Hospital, aiming at reducing out-of-pocket expenditure. The ministry in 2025 plans to build 5 new primary health care centers in hard-to-reach communities, complementing the 5 new health centers established earlier this year by His Excellency the President. Contracts have been awarded for the upgrading and refurbishing of Brikama into a significant health center and Buyam General Hospital to include postgraduate training. Additionally, the construction of the Emergency Treatment Center at Farato and the Food and Drug Lab at Brusubi will be scaled up. The ministry will also prioritize refurbishing 9 health facilities and constructing 6 health posts nationwide, creating 8 additional health posts to increase access and quality of services. Ministry of Gender. The ministry remains committed to achieving gender equality and parity and promoting women's participation in all social, political, and economic activities as enshrined in the National Gender Policy 2024-2035. In line with this, the Ministry of Gender, Children, and Social Welfare is implementing an economic and financial inclusion of girls and young women through formation of cooperatives, capacity building on income-generating activities and programs. In 2024, the ministry has made disbursements to 8,400 women across 3 regions in the country and established a disability fund to provide financial support to the disabled individuals. The ministry is also implementing a family strengthening program that offers a monthly cash transfer of $1,000 per beneficiary, targeting older persons, disabled individuals, orphan children, and female-headed households. In 2025, the ministry will prioritize political empowerment of women and girls by facilitating the promulgation of Women Reservation Right Bill. The ministry will also implement new policies and programs that will include establishment of a project implementation unit, rehabilitation of office spaces, acquiring a permanent office, and popularizing the Disability Act of 2023, the National Gender Policy, and setting up special code for SGBV, sexually gender-based violence, and re-evaluating children protection strategies. Social protection. The Gambia government continues to demonstrate its commitment to social protection. work has started on mainstreaming social assistance into the national budget rather than relying on ad hoc and project-based cash transfers. In 2024, the government piloted the support to vulnerable groups such as orphans and vulnerable children, people with disabilities, female-headed households, and older persons. To consolidate the gains, the first ever direct legislation on social assistance sector, the Social Protection Act, was passed in July 2024. To demonstrate government's commitment, the Act seeks to set standards of social service delivery to the poor and the vulnerable communities, especially the marginalized communities groups such as people living with disabilities, widows, orphans, and people living with HIV, among others. In 2025, the plan is to operationalize the Social Protection Fund established by the Social Protection Secretariat with a starting capital of $200 million. This will finance the expansion of the government cash transfer to vulnerable groups and other social protection interventions across different sectors as defined in the National Social Protection Regulation 2024. Youth and sports. The Ministry of Youth and Sports made significant strides in youth empowerment and sports development in 2024. Key initiatives include the successful implementation of comprehensive youth development programs such as vocational training, entrepreneurship opportunities, and mentorship schemes, all aimed at equipping young people with the skills and confidence needed for sustainable livelihood. The Gambia Shanghai Initiative trained young people in integrated farming, contributing to food security and poverty reduction. In sports, the ministry focused on enhancing infrastructure by revamping existing facilities and constructing new sports centers nationwide. Investments in the sports sector gear and skilled coaches have supported young athletes to excel. Additionally, strategic partnerships with schools and community organizations have helped identify and nurture talent from early age. In 2025, the ministry plans to secure better office spaces for the National Enterprise Development Initiatives and the National Sports Council, and to acquire the necessary equipment and vehicles to enhance operational capacity. The ministry will prioritize investing in the youth empowerment and sports development with a focus on expanding the infrastructure and strengthening partnerships to ensure sustainable progress in these sectors. Cross-cutting sectors. Honorable Speaker, the Ministry of Interior. To manage migration effectively, the ministry has developed a roadmap for the return and reintegration of migrants in the Gambia. The Geneva Center for Security Sector Governance Immigration Project was initiated to address critical gaps in the Immigration Department legal and policy framework. To improve the border management, foster peace, stability, and security, construction of immigration border posts was launched in Amdalai, Ker Ali, and Jiboro. A joint task force has been set up to monitor and apprehend illegal migrants and alleged criminals in sensitive areas. The ministry developed key policies, including the gender mainstreaming policy, internal investigation policy, and review of the 1940 Police Act, 49 Police Act. The Gambia Prison Services improved the safe transportation of inmates by purchasing vehicles and receiving support from the GTSC. The Gambia Fire and Rescue Services responded to 432 calls in 2023, including fire incidents, extrication, sea rescues, and fatalities. The Drug Law Enforcement Agency successfully implemented the supply suppression strategy, seizing significant quantity of controlled substances such as cannabis, hashish, ecstasy, methamphetamine, and cocaine, while prosecuting multiple suspects nationwide. To ensure drug demand reduction, the agency reinforced public awareness through local TV and radio programs and launched additional drug-free clubs in schools, educating students about the dangers of drug use. In 2025, the ministry will prioritize improving public confidence through better service delivery, building capacity and development, enhancing police capabilities, and strengthening police governance. The prison department will construct a modern kitchen at Joshua and Janjambure prisons to enhance feeding of inmates. The Gambia Fire Rescue Services will intensify fire safety awareness across all regions and municipalities by providing refresher courses for officers and firefighters, upgrading the Brikama and Bara fire stations, and completing the backfilling at the Serekunda Fire and Rescue Station ground. The ministry will also prioritize enhancing manpower needs and the construction of a forensic laboratory and exhibit store. Information. The ministry has made significant progress in 2024. Some of the achievements include hosting of bi-weekly Mansakunda monthly press conferences, broadcasting of sector-specific documentaries on development-focused programs and projects, and conducting the training of information officers from various MDAs on implementing the Access to Information Act 2021. The ministry is also formulating an information and communication policy to establish guidelines and frameworks to manage information within the government effectively. Lastly, the establishment of the ATI Commission will help to monitor and oversee the implementation of ATI Act 2021. The ministry is working on the finalization and of the formulation of the Personal Data Protection and Privacy Bill 2024. The ministry plans to undertake outreach programs to enhance communication strategies by ensuring that information about government programs and projects reaches the entire population. Strategic communication consultants would be contracted to develop a strategic communication plan to ensure that high-quality information content is accessible in the local language, and a regular monitoring and reporting framework to measure the impact of communication activities. The ministry will ensure that information, media, and broadcasting bill will be tabled before the National Assembly by the second quarter of 2025. The bill will harmonize emerging issues on information, media, and broadcasting sectors to harness the demographic dividends in the Gambia. The ministry also plans to create a modern media press center to empower the different players in the information value chain and advance press freedom and open governance initiatives. Ministry of Justice. Honorable Speaker, the ministry has commenced the development of a new cost-effective database that will enhance efficient work management and streamlining registration processes for public benefit. The cloud-based intellectual property automated systems was completed and will now allow the IP office staff to work remotely, thereby enhancing productivity. The Industrial Property Office, in partnership with the Gambia Tourism Office, has successfully registered the country brand the Gambia, the smiling coast of Africa, quote unquote, with the World Intellectual Property Organization, making the Gambia one of the first countries to register its brand as a trademark under the Madrid Protocol. In addition, the ministry's Industrial Property Office supported a mentorship program for 50 women SMEs. The Office of the Curator has introduced a direct debit payment system for beneficiaries, replacing the previous method of issuing checks through central bank, which allows beneficiaries to access their funds within 24 hours. In 2025, the Ministry of Justice will prioritize upgrading the database to allow clients, including legal practitioners, banks, real estate agents, entrepreneurs, and the public, to register remotely. Phase 2 of the deeds registration system will be implemented, which involves capturing and linking property records in the system to provide a complete history of all registered lands. The capacity of the inspection team at the company's department will be strengthened to ensure nationwide coverage. Public service and administrative reform, policy coordination and delivery. The Personnel Management Office, in collaboration with the Ministry of Public Service and partners, have carried out a functional review of the MDAs to streamline and rationalize the overlapping roles and conflicts of the MDAs to make the government more efficient and effective. The office also conducted a capacity gap assessment with key relevant cadres to formulate competency development programs relevant to these cadres. Recently, the PMO carried out a staff audit exercise at Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, Ministry of Health, and Ministry of Agriculture. This was geared towards managing and controlling the human resources and the wage bills. Ministry of Environment, Climate Change, and Wildlife. The ministry has made significant strides in managing climate risk, including developing a draft carbon trading bill to create a balanced and fair carbon trading market in the Gambia. The successful launch of the nationally determined contribution NDC and its implementation plan is set to contribute to a net zero reduction of carbon dioxide emission with clear targets and indicators. The ministry is actively implementing the mitigation action plan under the MRV system to ensure climate change adaptation and mitigation capabilities. This includes tracking solar PVs, GIS forest cover, and the establishment of a climate action center at the UTG. As a member of the LIF-AR initiative, the Gambia is nearing completion of the establishment phase. The Department of Parks and Wildlife Management has also designated Nyomi Biosphere Reserve, benefiting 178,000 people in the North Bank region. In 2025, the ministry will focus on finalizing and implementing the carbon trading bill, scaling up the NDC activities, and enhancing climate change adaptation through Climate Action Center. The ministry will also advance the LIF-AR initiative, focusing on community investment. The Department of Parks and Wildlife will also implement the draft wetland policy to address pollution, erosion, and mangrove dieback challenges. The ministry will also distribute 52,342 Malina stumps and 100 bags of mangrove propagules to restore degraded man forest. Additionally, the Global Biodiversity Framework Early Action Support Project will be launched to align the national targets with the biodiversity conservation goals. Efforts will also continue to restore 4,000 hectares of degraded wetlands in partnership with the Mangrove Consortium and Ørsted Energy. Lands and Regional Government. The Ministry of Lands, Regional Government, and Religious Affairs is making strides in enhancing the capacity of the country's land administrative sector. With regard to the misuse of official stamps by the Alkalolus, that is the village heads, the ministry will procure official stamps for all Sefolu and Alkalolus. These stamps will be issued upon appointment and reclaimed by the government upon dismissal. The ministry is cognizant of boundary disputes between districts and villages. The demarcation of villages and district boundaries will be carried out, and the development of affordable housing scheme will be facilitated. In addition, the state-of-the-art office complex will also be constructed that hosts the National Land Information Center, which will manage the registration of all land via an online system. With an ongoing challenges of land use, the ministry will implement a new land use plan that balances development, agriculture, conservation, and urban growth while safeguarding natural resources. The ministry will finalize the development of new real estate regulations that will address the issues of unclear property ownerships, unregulated land sales, and the ongoing disputes, among others. Foreign Affairs. The government, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, continues to strengthen its current bilateral and multilateral relations, as well as endeavor to open new frontiers of relations to serve citizens better. The ministry continues to maintain a strong voice on the global issues targeting preventative diplomacy aimed at peace building, peacekeeping, reforms of the international system, and the wider global financing architecture. To ensure effectiveness and efficiency, the ministry has embarked on professionalizing the foreign services, revising the foreign service regulation, developing the posting policy, jurisdiction mapping, and drafting a foreign service bill. Work is in progress on the development of a codified foreign policy and a code of conduct for foreign service officers. The ministry is in the process of developing the National Migration Strategy 2024 to 2029 that seeks to provide a national framework for a progressive migration management. Additionally, the ministry continues to attach great importance on facilitating the safe returns and reintegration of stranded Gambian migrants abroad. To date, over 2,000 stranded Gambian migrants have been assisted from various parts of the world to return and reunite with their families since January 2024. Data and statistics. The Gambia Bureau of Statistics conducted the population housing census in May-June of this year, marking the country's first digital census. The census provides essential data for governance, policy making, development, planning, and social welfare, and serve as a sampling framework for future surveys. In 2025, the GBOS, in collaboration with stakeholders, will conduct two major household surveys, one, the Integrated Household Survey, and the Demographic and Health Survey. Furthermore, the Labor Force Survey and the National Migration Survey and the National Disability Study will be conducted. Revenue Administration. The Gambia Revenue Authority remains committed to improving revenue and service delivery at all levels by making compliance easy and cost-effective. Guided by the GRA Corporate Strategic Plan 2020 to 2024, numerous reforms and modernization strategies were implemented. To sustain the gains registered so far, GRA is developing a new 5-year strategic plan 2025 to 2029. The plan will be underpinned by 4 strategic objectives, which are to improve the voluntary compliance, enhance trade facilitation, ensure cultural transformation and internal efficiencies. It will continue to leverage on ICT digitalization to drive modernization and reform initiatives. Numerous reform initiatives have been implemented during the year. These include rolling out of the Ascuda World System, the National Single Window System, Domestic Resource Mobilization Project, Revenue Assurance System for excise taxes and petroleum, among others. Additionally, contracts for the new Integrated Tax Administration System, ITAS, has been signed, aimed at digitalizing domestic tax administration from registration, filing, and payment process. GRA is working on other ongoing projects such as the development of the rental income systems, digitalization of VAT collection, border and inland border control reforms, post-clearance audit, operationalization of internal affairs function, and the deployment of the monitoring and evaluation system. All these are expected to ease the reporting and creating the accountabilities for the implementation of the reform initiatives. Honorable Speaker, we now turn to medium-term macroeconomic and fiscal outlook. The GDP growth. The domestic economy prospect remains favorable. The economic growth is projected at 5.9% in 2025 and to average 5.2% in the medium term. This will be driven by the expected stability in the macroeconomic environment and sustained growth in the productive sectors. The agriculture sector, despite risks of climate change, is expected to register a growth of 4.2%. This will be supported by ongoing government, development partners, and private sector initiatives. The government's thrust of closing the infrastructure deficit, coupled with sustained remittance inflows and private sector savings, will continue to anchor construction growth. Regarding the electricity, Excuse me. Yes, that's okay. Here. Yes. Okay, we're here. Okay. Okay. Yes, I'm here. The government thrust of closing the infrastructure deficit, coupled with the sustained remittance inflows and private sector savings, will continue to anchor construction growth. Regarding electricity's efforts to improve efficiency, reducing transmission and distribution losses, and increasing the domestic generation will help to upscale the supply. The tourism sector growth is expected to benefit from recovery in the global economy and the local market promotional activities being spearheaded by the GTB and the private sector. Inflation. Inflation is projected to continue decelerating towards the central bank target of 5%. The disinflation trend will be sustained by expected moderation in commodity prices and convergence in the fiscal and monetary policy efforts. Similarly, the exchange rate is projected to remain stable in 2025 and the medium term. This will be driven by the expected sustained increase in foreign exchange inflows. Fiscal outlook. The thrust of the 2025 government, the thrust of government in 2025 is to ensure sustainable public finances through consolidating revenue mobilization reforms, expenditure prioritization, and prudent debt management. The key priority for fiscal management is the reduction of debt vulnerability. The debt to GDP ratio is on the downward trajectory from 85% in 2021 to an estimated about 65% in 2024. The objective is to bring this below 50% in the medium term. Revenue and grants. The revenue outlook remains strong on account of improved economic prospects, continued domestic revenue mobilization, trust, and favorable development partner support. In 2025, revenue and grants are projected at 44.7 billion, which is 22.7% of the GDP. Of this amount, 29.1 billion will be domestic revenue and 15.6% will be grants. Tax revenue is projected at 21.2 billion, that's 10.7% of the GDP, representing a 23% increase from last year's budget. The growth is primarily driven by the continued tax policy alignment, review of the investment code to strengthen control on the tax expenditures, policy actions to support tax compliance and enhance enforcement measures, and the implementation of the digital solution to improve tax administrations. However, the Gambia's tax administration, the tax collection effort is still relatively below the sub-Saharan and OECD averages. Both corporate and personal income taxes are expected to grow due to this strengthened compliance management through data matching, revocation of special investment certificates of non-compliant companies, and other enforcement actions on rental incomes. Excise taxes, excise duties through tax stamps initiative and increased risk-based audit. Value-added tax will also see a boost in 2025 on account of ongoing audits in key sectors like telecom and banking, planned audit in hospitality sectors, and the anticipated introduction of e-VAT invoicing, which will help strengthen compliance in key revenue heads. Non-tax revenue is expected to increase by 45% in 2025 compared to 2024, mainly due to an anticipated receipt of $50 million as a payment for the second tranche of the Senegambia Bridge Asset Recycling Program. In terms of grants, 12.6 billion is envisaged as project grants and 3 billion as budget support. The bulk of the budget support is expected to come from the World Bank, that's 2 billion, and the European Union, which is 13.5 million euros. Expenditure. In line with the envisaged resource envelope, the 2025 total government expenditure is projected at 47.4 billion, representing an increase of 21% from the 2024 budget. Of the total expenditure, 31.2 will be recurrent and 16.2 billion will be capital and net lending. Personnel emoluments, use of goods and services, subsidies and transfers, and capital are expected to increase by 20, 31, and 35% respectively. The projected increase in the personnel emoluments expenditure from the approved figure of 7.4 billion in 2024 to 8.8 billion in 2025 is largely driven by the projected 1.4 billion impact from the proposed increase in salaries and allowances and the increase of transport and residential allowances. The increase in the personnel emolument is due to an average increase of 30% in the salaries of the core civil service. In addition, transport and house rent allowances will be increased from 1,500 to 3,000 and from 1,700 to 3,500. These increases in allowances will apply to grades 1 to 8 under the integrated pay scale of the civil service. Consequently, the government has developed a new integrated pay scale to reflect these changes, and the scale is attached to the booklet. To address the inequity, the increase is graduated. It's not a one-lump increase. Grade 1 will have an increase of 75%, grade 2, 67%, grade 3, 59%, grade 4, 49%, and the fixed grades will have an increase of 7%, while grade 12 will have an increase of 22%. The pensioners have not been left out, and the minimum pension has been increased to 1,000. Nobody will now have a pension of less than 1,000 in the country monthly, and $500 has been added to all other pensioners on a monthly basis. This 2025 salary increase will make a total increase of salaries of 60% from 2022 to 2025. And this will bring the total salary increase to 110% under the leadership of His Excellency President Adama Barrow. This is a manifestation that the budget allocation of the government is people-centric, with the aim of improving the lives and livelihood of Gambians. Another significant allocation is the 1 billion to the energy sector to ensure reliable energy supply and cushion the population from potential tariff increase. Debt service continues to attract the largest allocation of the budget, and for 2025, 11 billion, which is 23% of the total all funds budget, will be allocated to debt service. This is due to the commencement of the debt service following the debt deferral initiative suspension, deferral suspension initiative. For goods and services expenditure, the projected increase from 9.79 billion in 2024 to 9.98 in 2025 is mainly due to OSC-related expenditures, travel, rents and rates, and training. Meanwhile, subsidies and transfers, which are mainly subventions, are projected to increase from 4.9 billion in 2024 to 6.47 billion in 2025, representing an improvement of 31%. The increase is mainly because of the energy subsidy under the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy, which is expected to cater for tariff compensation to NAWEC. Debt interest is projected to increase by 15% from 5.1 billion in 2024 to 5.8 billion in 2025 because of an expected 63% in interest payment from external debt, as well as the increase in the interest payments on the 30-year bond. Overall, debt service interest and principal payment and amortization is projected to reach 11 billion, an increase from 7.5 billion in 2024. Budget deficit and financing. In line with the fiscal consolidation thrust The budget deficit for 2025 is projected to slow down to 2.7 billion, which is 1.4% of the GDP for all funds. The deficit for government local funds is only 198 million, which is 0.1% of the GDP, and is the lowest for the last 10 years on average. The deficit will be financed in line with the medium-term debt strategy objective of meeting financing needs at minimum cost, subject to a prudent degree of risk. In view of the high gross financing needs, driven mainly by short-term domestic debt, maturities and expiring debt deferrals, the medium-term debt strategy prioritizes reprofiling short-term debt into long-term and reliance on concessional external borrowing. Public debt. Despite the fiscal pressures, the public debt is expected to remain on a sustainable path. The public and publicly guaranteed debt is projected to go down to 63% of the GDP in 2025 and is expected to maintain the downward trajectory in the medium term. The downward trend will be supported by the government's commitment to contain fiscal deficit to below 1% of the GDP, maintain exchange rate stability, and minimizing the materialization of contingent liabilities from SOEs, PPPs, and legacy issues. Risks to the budget. The macro fiscal framework underpinning the 2025 budget is faced with risks that have potential to cause deviations. Much of the risks are inclined towards the downside. These include macroeconomic risks, which may emanate from global market volatility and erratic supply of electricity. If they crystallize, they may undermine the projected economic growth, inflation, exchange rate, and ultimately public finances. On the revenue and the grant side, there are risks related to delays or resistances in implementing reforms and donor fatigue. If this happens, revenue and grants may experience some shortfalls. The expenditure is also prone to risk related to climate change events. This may deviate resources away from planned activities. The public debt portfolio is also exposed to exchange rate risk and refinancing risk. Movement in exchange rate and interest rate may affect debt sustainability. The poor financial standing among the majority of the SOEs pose a significant risk to the government in the form of contingent liabilities. The rationale for 2025 budget allocations. Honorable Speaker, the rationale for 2025 budget allocation being discussed below is primarily focused on the government local funds, Ministry of Defense. The budget will increase by 17% compared to the approved budget of 2024. The key to this increase is the 100 million budgeted for the soon-to-be effective terms and conditions of services, TACOs, for the armed forces. However, food and food services for the Army of 150 million remains the same as 2024, is also catered for. An amount of 13.65 million is also being allocated for operation and maintenance of boats. Accordingly, funds amounting to 24.4 million have been set aside for the renovation of some military barracks in the 2025 budget. Ministry of Interior budget will increase from 1.6 billion in 2024 to 1.9 billion, which is an equivalent of 19%. A large share of the ministry's budget is directed towards taking care of personnel expenses. However, food and food services are also significant, amounting to 121 million. About 57% of the amount budgeted for food and food services is for police, while 15 million is for prisons. Among the 27 million, an amount of 27 million has also been allocated for passports, while an additional 10 million is set aside for the construction of police stations and posts. Subvention to draw log enforcement also amounts to 162 million. Ministry of Tourism and Culture, the ministry's budget increased by 17% compared to 2024. The key areas of expenditures are personnel emoluments for subvention, which increased by 55% to 22 million. It is worth noting that the ministry still has the Tourism Diversification and Resilience Project under it. It is expected that this project will supplement the government's effort in revitalizing the tourism sector. Ministry of Foreign Affairs budget increased by 9%, moving from 1.7 billion in 2024 to 1.95 billion in 2025, largely as a result of expected increase of 253 million in personnel emoluments. The ministry budget also contains 15 million for post-OIC activities to cater for embassy rents, which amount to 356 million. The budget also allocates 74 million for the purchase of vehicles for some embassies, respectively Washington, Paris, Jeddah, Rabat, Havana, Pretoria, Beijing, Moscow, and the new embassies. Furthermore, 10 million has been set aside for the construction of Chancery in Dhaka. Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. The Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs budget for 2025 is 2.4 billion, an indication of an increase of 23% compared to 2024. The increase is partly by subvention to agencies, which increased by 7% to 1.13 billion. Other key items include the inclusion of 70 million, a 6% increase for the application software system, licensed software to support the IFMIS and to improve financial management. The Internal Audit Directorate has 55 million budgeted for it. This represents a 9% increase compared to the approved budget of 2024. MOFIA budget also includes a 250 million for equity participation and a 313 million for the public administration and modernization project. Ministry of Lands and Regional Integration and Regional Governments. The ministry's budget is 389 million, an increase of 2% compared to 2024. Despite the marginal increase, it includes a budget of 25 million for the ongoing Commission of Inquiry into Local Government and 35 million contribution to local projects. Ministry of Agriculture, an amount of 961.7 million has been catered for the ministry, representing an increase of 116 million on the 2024 budget. The budget includes 507 million for the input subsidies for organic fertilizers and seeds for the farmers. This represents a marginal increase of 1% compared to 2024. The budget also caters for 56 million for the purchase of tractors. Ministry of Works Infrastructure. There is an increase of 15% decrease when compared to the 2024 budget. The decrease is primarily as a result of the winning of the OIC Baton-Harding Highway and other roads project of the budget. However, the 2025 budget also includes 1.88 billion for roads, including 1.47 for the expected expenditure on asset recycling facility. Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education. Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education for 2025 budget is 5.1 billion. This represents an increase of 21% on the budget of 2024. A significant portion of this increase stems from subvention and personnel emoluments, which increased by 433 million and 170 million respectively. Other key items on the MOPSI budget include the school improvement grant, 288 million, feeds and handling, 170 million, school feeding, 166 million. Fees and handling charges are intended to cover WAEC exam fees, and the ministry's budget also includes a budget of 114 million for the public administration project. Ministry of Health. The budget for the ministry for 2025 is 2.71 billion, which represents an increase of 17% compared to 2024. The Ministry's Health budget mainly caters for subventions, which is 1.2 billion budgeted as transfers to agencies, including 176.6 million for Riders for Health and 369 million for Edward Francis Hospital. Other key items include drugs and dressings and medical supplies, 204, consultancy to pay Cuban doctors, 111 million, vaccines, 42.25 million, and personnel emolument, 797 million, which includes 71 million for overseas travels, treatment. An amount of 50 million has also been included in the budget to kickstart the National Health Insurance Scheme. On infrastructure, 42.59 million and 90.4 million has been budgeted to support the improvement of health infrastructure, and these have been budgeted under hospital, clinics, and health facilities, buildings, and structures, respectively. Ministry of Youth and Sports budget for 2025 represents of 135 million is an 11% increase from 2024. This includes 27 million to support the Gambia So High initiative, whose budget increased by 193%. Ministry of Fisheries and Water Resources. The Ministry of Fisheries and Water Resources budget for 2025 is 56.51 million. This is a 5% increase in the ministry's 2024 budget. This stated amount will support the construction of water points and reticulating systems, fish ponds, and fish breeding facilities, 5 million, as well as drilling of wells and boreholes, 10 million. Ministry of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology. The Ministry of MOHAS has an estimated budget of 405 million, which is an increase of 69% in 2020, over 2024. The MOHAS budget includes 100 million as subvention to tertiary institutions, 150 million as open scholarships, 40 million as contribution to student loan scheme, and 20 million for the GTSC school bus services. Bursaries to students of 15 million and 5 million for the operational or realization of the Research and Innovation Fund. Ministry of Petroleum. The estimated budget for the Petroleum Ministry is 1.26 billion. This represents a 478% increase compared to 2024. A key reason for this increase is the energy subsidy of 1 billion included in the budget to cater for tariff compensation to NAWEC. The ministry's budget also includes 140 million for land compensation to support solarization. Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Welfare. The estimated budget for the ministry is 98.982. This is a 22% increase compared to 2024. The budget includes 15 million for the Women Enterprise Fund, which increased from 10 million, and 3.5 million for food and food services for the shelter, which increased from 1.9 million. Another 3.5 million has also been factored to support the victims of gender-based violence, while 4 million has been set aside to support the differently abled. Medium-term policy reforms. Honorable Speaker, we now turn on to the medium-term policy framework for the 2025 budget. To support the economic stability that underpins the commitment to fiscal sustainability in the short to medium term, the government intends to implement a set of reforms aimed at improving this resource mobilization, transparency, and accountability. On the revenue front, the following reforms will be implemented. Revision of the Investment Code under GAIPA Act 2015 to make it more responsive to our national economic development agenda. Finalization and implementation of domestic resource mobilization strategy that will identify and leverage on the potential sources of revenue and inform medium-term revenue reforms aimed at broadening the tax base. Tax expenditure policy provides the framework for the application and approval of tax expenditures, monitoring and reporting mechanism, as well as the institutional arrangements for its implementation. Implementation of the duty waiver policy, which focuses on procedures for application and approval of duty waivers, eligibility criteria, responsibilities of the MDA's compliance and enforcement provisions. Automation of the duty waiver application and approval process. This involves streamlining and modernizing the existing system. Implementation of a system to regulate and tax short-term rentals. This move will ensure tax compliance as well as fair competition for all players in the rental market. The system will be supported by the introduction of digital solution to rental income tax. The IT system has already been procured and the system deployment is at implementation stage. Deployment of an excise stamp petroleum marking solution for the excisable goods, telecom sector, and energy. The adoption and implementation of the aid policy will help to secure funding and greater predictability of grants. Furthermore, continuous engagement with our development partners will help to ensure that donor assistance are disbursed as scheduled. On the expenditure side, the following measures will be implemented: strengthening the expenditure controls and cash management to align spending with available resources. This will help reduce the accumulation of arrears. Shift government expenditure policy towards a performance-centered perspective. There is a need to strengthen the alignment of expenditure to development priorities. Strengthening the implementation of program-based budget becomes key in shifting the discussion on the budget from input to results-based financing. This will improve efficiency in spending and promote accountability. Rationalization and restructuring of subvented entities. To control and manage subvented entities, agencies, expenditure, government will mainstream some of them into ministries and departments. Given the large number of subvented entities, a policy on the establishment of new entities will be developed, agencies will be developed. A study on rationalization and consolidation of subvented entities with MDAs will be carried out. The use of IFMIS system by projects and subvention entities. Extending the use of IFMIS to all new donor and government-funded projects remains key in ensuring comprehensiveness in reporting of public resources. This will also help GRA to identify non-compliance and enforce tax obligation more effectively. Rollout of the IFMIS system to all publicly funded institutions will become mandatory. Agencies are to commence implementation arrangements with the Accountant General's Department in earnest. Any subvented agency that fails to adopt the IFMIS system after 9 months will be sanctioned, and this can include suspension of subvention. To improve implementation of public projects, government will develop a pipeline of appraised investment projects based on the government strategic review board or prioritization tool. Review, refine, and implement a framework for monitoring the budget and government projects. Given the relative lack of visibility on how government funds are utilized, the proposal will be to roll out a framework focusing on budgetary programs and projects with high fiscal risk, and this includes the school improvement grants. Avoiding contracting non-concessional borrowing and follow a concessional borrowing plan. Proposed revenue measures for 2025. Honorable Speaker, the revenue administrative measures for 2025 are as below. In addition to tax policy and revenue administration reform, government is seeking to introduce the following revenue measures effective January 1st. A person who retains the services of a supplier, consultant, contractor, or subcontractor to carry out works or supply labor or goods or provide services shall withhold tax on gross amount of any payment to the supplier, consultant, contractor, or subcontractor in respect of works, goods, and services. A, in the case of a payment made to a non-resident contractor at a rate of 10%. In the case of a payment made to a resident contractor in the Gambia for public works contracted with the Gambia government at a rate of 5%, in any other case at a rate of 8%. A tenant who is a ministry, government, department, or agency, local authority, diplomatic mission, international organization, established entities, or a person under the category of large taxpayer occupying a property used for commercial or residential purpose shall, at the time of making the payment, withhold tax on the rental income at a rate of 15% in the case of a property used for commercial purposes and 8% in the case of a property used for residential purposes. A non-resident person that makes a taxable supply to Gambia shall register for tax with the authority and obtain a tax identification number. A non-resident person shall include the tax on its invoice for all taxable supply. The person to whom a taxable supply is made in the Gambia shall withhold or collect the tax in the Gambia and remit the same to the Gambia Revenue Authority in the currency of the transaction. A non-resident person that makes a taxable supply to the Gambia may appoint a representative for the purpose of compliance with its tax obligation. The Gambia Revenue Authority may issue guidelines for the purpose of giving effect to the provisions of this section, including in the form, time, procedure for filing returns and payment by non-resident suppliers. Non-resident suppliers of online digital businesses to consumers, business to business, or goods or services shall register with and obtain a tax identification number from Gambia Revenue Authority. The Commissioner General shall prescribe the type of documents that may be transmitted to the GRA by a non-resident person, including the manner of transmission. The tax-free threshold on personal income tax is revised upwards from $24,000 per annum to $36,000 per annum. That means additional tax-free income of $12,000 to all pay-as-you-earn earners. And the table as follows: from 0 to 36, 0%, 36 to 46,000, 5%, 46 to 56, 10%, 56,000 to 66, 15%, 66,000 to 76%, 76,000, 20%, and any item above 76,000, 25%. Tax rate on the winnings of betting, gaming, lottery, and gambling will be increased from 30% to 40% of the winning. Winning means payout from betting, gaming, lottery, prize competition, gambling, or similar transaction under the Betting and Gaming Act, excluding the amount staked or wagered in that transaction. With the approval of the Director of Agriculture, animal feed and agricultural equipment shall be exempted from duty if the Ministry responsible for finance is satisfied that the items are for the sole use of poultry farming or agricultural purposes. Export duty shall be imposed on waste and scrap metal at a rate of $5 per kilo. Tobacco control levy on cigarettes, cigars, and cigarro loose is revised to $2 per kilo. Cigarettes and other tobacco products shall be taxed as follows. Excise tax on cigarettes and cigars is hereby adjusted from $40 per pack to $45 per pack. Environmental tax on cigarettes and cigars is hereby adjusted from $7.22 per pack to $9.22 per pack. Excise tax on other tobacco products is hereby adjusted from $450 per kilo to $470 per kilo. Environmental tax on other tobacco product is hereby adjusted from $220 per kilo to $240. The ad valorem excise tax on imported tobacco product is hereby adjusted from 10% to 15%. Motor vehicles purchased and imported by and in the name of the government of the Gambia shall be exempted from all taxes and fees. This exemption is only applicable to central government entities and exclude government agencies and public enterprises. Taxable supply of goods and services in respect of donor-funded projects shall be zero-rated for the purpose of value-added tax. However, MDAs are required to submit to the Ministry of Finance a list of all contractors and copies of their contracts. The sales purchase of air tickets shall be subject to a withholding tax of 1% on air tickets, and there will be an abolition on green tax levy. In order to promote youth and sports development in the country, companies and businesses will benefit from a tax deduction during the computation of their corporate income taxes for the expenses arising from sporting activities only. Increase the excise tax on alcohol as follows. Beer from $150 per liter to $165 per liter. Wine from $225 per liter to $240 per liter. Spirits from $260 per liter to $275 per liter. Conclusions. In conclusion, Honorable Speaker, the Gambian economy remains resilient despite the tough global economic outlook and the climate change-related challenges. A stronger economy with gradual decline in inflation is expected. The planned reduction in the fiscal deficit over time will help in sustaining the debt in the medium term, which will be supported by strong domestic resource mobilization and fiscal discipline. The 2025 budget will be anchored on domestic resource mobilization to reduce our fiscal and debt vulnerabilities. Tremendous efforts will be made to improve the tax administration modernization and enhance compliance and enforcement. Government will intensify revenue collection from NDAs by strengthening their capabilities and improve tax compliance policy adherence. The government will continue its improvement drive to foster fiscal discipline, accountability, and transparency through improved cash management, publication of tax expenditures, and reporting of public debt and timely publication of financial statements. On the public debt, the government will pursue prudent debt management through improvement in liquidity management in collaboration with the Central Bank of the Gambia, management of contingent liabilities emanating from the SOEs and the PPPs contracts, and the gradual reduction of the fiscal deficit in percentage of the GDP over the medium term. Let me now take this opportunity on behalf of the government and the entire population of the Gambia to record our profound gratitude to all our development partners for their unwavering support to our development agenda. It is with deep appreciation that I mention the World Bank Group, the International Monetary Fund, European Union, African Development Bank, Islamic Development Bank, the UN agencies, African Union, OPEC Fund, International Fund for OPEC, Badia, GIZ, IFAD, ECOWAS, MRC Holland Foundation, the Commonwealth, Red Cross, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Saudi Fund for Development, Kingdom of Morocco, Turkey, State of Kuwait, Kuwait Fund, Russia, People's Republic of China, Japan, South Korea, Republic of France, United Kingdom, and United States and Germany. I would like to thank His Excellency, the President of the Republic, Adama Barrow, for his leadership. Let me also hasten to thank my cabinet colleagues and team for the hardworking staff at the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. I'm equally thankful to this August Assembly and the staff of the National Assembly under the leadership of the Speaker and the Clerk for working tirelessly to approve the 2025 budget estimate. We remain committed to sustaining this partnership, and we believe as we work together, we will jointly deliver our mandate to develop the Gambia and its people. On this note, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Minister for Finance. Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs. Honorable members, this is as a result of the beauty, the inherent good in the Honorable Minister's statement. Honorable Minister, we are grateful. Honorable members, any seconder to the motion? Honorable Member for Old Yundum and Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to the motion for the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs and his fellow colleagues for a well-presented budget
Thank you, Honorable Member for Old and Deputy Majority Leader. Honorable members, pursuant to Order 87.4 of the Standing Orders of the National Assembly, I will adjourn the debate on the Appropriation Bill 2025 until Monday, 16th December 2024, to enable members to study the bill. Honorable members, I urge you to approach this critical matter with diligence, commitment, and a spirit of cooperation. The debate and scrutiny of the bill must reflect our shared commitment to upholding the interests of the nation, ensuring transparency, and addressing the needs of every citizen. As the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs presents this bill, I call upon all members to remain guided by the principles of integrity, inclusivity, and equity as we deliberate on the appropriations for the next fiscal year. The decisions we make will have a profound impact on our country's economic growth, social development, and the well-being of our citizens. Honorable members, before adjourning this assembly, I wish to register thanks and gratitude to the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs for ably tabling the 2025 appropriation bill as required of him by the Constitution. The Honorable Minister did set out government's fiscal and economic development plans and programs for the fiscal year 2025. On that note, honorable members, I wish to take this opportunity on behalf of both sides of the Assembly, and indeed on my own behalf, to extend our thanks and appreciation to the following distinguished guests and invitees for gracing this important sitting of the National Assembly. His Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia, my Lord the Chief Justice, Honorable Cabinet Ministers present here, members of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps, permanent secretaries and head of institutions, staff of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, senior government officials here in present, service chiefs, religious leaders, members of the press, and all other invited guests and the general public. On that note, honorable members, I now put the question. Be it resolved that this August Assembly do stand adjourned until Monday, 16 December 2024. Those in favor, please say aye. Those not in favor, please say no. The ayes have it. This Assembly now stands adjourned until Monday, 16 December 2024 at 10 a.m. prompt for the debate and consideration of the Appropriation Bill 2024. I thank you.